They called him the voice of a generation, then they watched him disappear. In the high-stakes world of reality television, we're used to seeing stars burn out, but Jonathan Antoine didn't just fade. He vanished into a self-imposed exile that left the industry wondering if the new Pavarotti had permanently lost his rhythm. Back in 2012, when a shy 17-year-old stood alongside Charlotte Giaconelli, he wasn't just a singer, he was a phenomenon. But as the cameras stopped rolling and the contracts began to settle, the boy with the operatic pipes found himself in a world that demanded more than just a voice. The pressure was immense. Imagine being the face of $1 million brand while your own mental health is spiraling behind a curtain of forced smiles. The split with Charlotte wasn't just a career move. It was a fracture that sent Jonathan into a tailspin, leading many to believe he'd become another casualty of the Simon Cowell machine. For years, the silence from his camp was deafening. No major tour, no flashy social media presence, just a void where a superstar should have been. The public began to speculate. Was it a legal battle? Did his voice finally give out under the strain of those massive high notes? Or was there something far more personal keeping him away from the stage? While the headlines moved on to the next big thing, Jonathan was navigating a labyrinth of personal challenges that would have broken a lesser man. He was effectively a ghost in his own industry, a name whispered in "Where Are They Now" segments, while he was secretly rebuilding his life from the ground up. But as the calendar turned to 2026, the silence was finally broken by an image that no one saw coming. What if the person you thought you knew was literally shedding their skin to survive? When the first images of Jonathan Antoine surfaced in early 2026, the internet didn't just buzz, it broke. Gone was the oversized, hesitant teenager who hid behind his hair and his partner. In his place stood a man who looked like he'd been carved out of stone, having dropped over 120 pounds in a transformation so extreme it triggered immediate rumors of surgery or secret treatments. However, the truth is far more grounded and, frankly, far more impressive. Jonathan has been remarkably candid about the fact that he couldn't take the traditional route to fitness. At his heaviest, the sheer physics of his body meant that a standard gym routine would have likely caused permanent damage to his joints and heart. He didn't hire a celebrity trainer to scream in his face. Instead, he took a path of quiet, relentless discipline. He began by simply walking, thousands upon thousands of steps within the safety of his own home, packing like a caged lion until the weight began to melt away. This wasn't about vanity, it was about survival. He realized that to keep his voice, he had to save the vessel that carried it. He's described the process not as a diet, but as a total recalibration of his relationship with his own existence. He stopped letting life live him and started dictating the terms of his physical presence. The transformation wasn't just physical, though. As the layers of weight fell away, a new confidence emerged, one that allowed him to finally address the questions that had been haunting his career for over a decade. Yet, as his body became lighter, a heavy realization about his own mind was about to change everything. For nearly 30 years, Jonathan Antoine felt like he was playing a game where everyone else had the rulebook except him. While the media labeled him as eccentric or painfully shy, Jonathan was living in a constant state of sensory and social overload that most people couldn't begin to fathom. It wasn't until very recently that the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place with a formal diagnosis of autism. For Jonathan, this wasn't a label of limitation, it was a liberation. It explained the shutting down during high-pressure interviews and the intense, almost obsessive focus he placed on his music. Looking back at his time on Britain's Got Talent, the signs were all there, masked by the narrative of a nervous kid. In reality, he was a neurodivergent individual thrust into the most neurotypical environment imaginable, a televised talent competition. He's spoken about how the diagnosis felt like finally seeing the world in high definition after years of looking through a blurry lens. It allowed him to stop apologizing for his quirks and start embracing the unique way his brain processes melody and emotion. This revelation has reframed his entire public persona. He isn't difficult or unreachable. He just navigates the world differently. This new understanding gave him the strength to push back against industry executives who wanted him to fit into a specific, marketable box. He's now an advocate for neurodiversity in the arts, proving that being on the spectrum isn't a barrier to greatness, but rather a different pathway to it. By sharing this, he's connected with a whole new audience who sees themselves in his struggle. With his mind and body finally in sync, Jonathan was ready to launch a comeback that would defy every expectation. If you expected Jonathan Antoine to return as a standard opera singer, you haven't been paying attention. In January 2026, he released his version of All of Me, and it served as a sonic middle finger to anyone who tried to pigeonhole him into a single genre. This wasn't just a cover, it was a declaration of independence. His voice, once characterized by raw, youthful power, has matured into something far more nuanced and haunting. He's moved away from the rigid structures of pure classical music to explore a space that's been described as cinematic soul. There were whispers behind the scenes that major labels were hesitant to back this new Jonathan, fearing that his core audience wouldn't follow him into these darker, more contemporary waters. But he didn't wait for their permission. Utilizing the tools of the modern age, he bypassed the gatekeepers to go directly to the fans who have stayed loyal through his years of silence. His upcoming album, By Request, is a testament to this grassroots connection. It's a collection of songs that he's actually wanted to sing, rather than the safe hits forced upon him by producers in the past. He's even been seen collaborating with unexpected artists in the electronic and indie spaces, proving that his range extends far beyond the grand stages of the West End. He's no longer the BGT kid performing for a panel of judges. He's an established artist performing for himself. This shift in creative control has resulted in music that feels authentic, raw, and deeply personal, reflecting the years of hardship and growth he's endured since his teenage debut. But even with this success, the shadows of his past continue to spark controversy in the industry. Success often comes with a price, and Jonathan Antoine is finally ready to talk about the Simon Cowell effect that nearly derailed his life. For years, there have been accusations surfacing about the way young talent is handled within the reality TV machine, and while Jonathan has remained professional, his recent statements hint at a much darker reality. He's spoken about being treated like a commodity rather than a person, a product that needed to be polished and sold before its expiration date. This wasn't just about the music. It was about the total control of his image and his narrative. The rumors of him being unreliable or shutting down were often, in his view, a direct result of being pushed past his breaking point by people who didn't understand his neurodivergence. He's hinted that the pressure to conform to a classical sweetheart image was a major factor in his decision to step back from the limelight. Now, in 2026, he's speaking out with a level of authority that has clearly made some industry heavyweights uncomfortable. He's used his platform to highlight the lack of support for young artists, mental health, calling for a radical shift in how talent shows operate. It's a brave move that could have cost him his career, but Jonathan seems past the point of caring about industry politics. He's built his own world now, one where he isn't beholden to the whims of a boardroom. This defiance has made him a hero to independent artists everywhere, but it has also fueled a quiet war between his camp and the traditional powers that be who still view him as the one that got away from their control. As he moves forward, the question remains, what does the future hold for a man who has already lived a lifetime of drama? The story of Jonathan